All right, so I'd like to show you the most practical and most performant way to do page transition with Astro. And I'd like to show you how we can get from something like this, where we don't have any page transition, to something a bit more advanced, to finally something that looks really good with some nice text animations, image animations, etc. Maybe really quick, the reason why I'm doing this tutorial is because I'm all about AI. I think that we should leverage AI to build websites, but what I've realized is that AI is not that good at doing page transitions. Everything that involves taste and animations, etc. AI is not that good at it, so that's why I want to do this little tutorial. So for that, we have that really basic code base. So it's a pretty much empty Astro project with that nav bar that you just saw, a empty app.js file that is hooked to the layout like this. And then we have a reset file, pretty much empty style file. And then we have our 2 pages with those 2 heroes that you saw. So one where we have the hero that just takes the half of the screen, and then the one where we have the image that takes the full screen. So that's pretty much it. So now, if we access the documentation, by the way, if you also want to have access to this, you can just click on the first link in the description. It's completely for free. So if we start with the documentation, we see that we have to install Swup. So that's the library we're going to use for the page transition. I've tested throughout the years a lot of different libraries to do page transitions. Swup is my favorite because it's the most performant way for me to do page transitions. Because Swup basically uses CSS to do the animation, and CSS is always going to be more performant than, for example, JavaScript. In the case of Barbara that uses JavaScript, it's also fine, but it can be a bit laggy on mobile. That's why I want to use Swup for this one. So let's install the dependencies. We're going to install Swup and the head plugin. The reason why we need the head plugin with Astro is because when we go from one page to the other in Astro, Astro likes to save the CSS, all of the CSS files inside the head. So if we're not using the head plugin, it's not going to refresh the head, and therefore we're not going to have the new CSS files for the next page. So that's why we have to use the head plugin. So let's install those 2 dependencies really quickly, and then we have to set up a shared container. So we have to add the ID of Swup, and we can also directly add the class that is going to define the animation of the page transition. So they need a shared container. Basically what that means is that every page on the project needs to have that same container. So in our case, since we're using Astro, we have that layout that all of the pages are using. And in that layout file, we can see that we have that main element with that slot. And since and all of the pages that uses this layout are going to be injected instead of the slot. So what that means is that we can add here an ID of Swup. We can also directly add the class that is going to define the animation. And if we then go back to the documentation, we have to now add the transition styles. So this is what is going to define the actual page transition animation. We can put that inside our styles.scss like that. And then we have to initialize Swup, so the import. So let's do it really quickly inside the app.js. And finally, we just call it underneath like that. So animate history browsing is basically when you want to also have a page transition effect when you go back with the trackpad or with your mouse, for example. By default, it's set to false, but we can leave it to true. Containers, that's you define basically what container is going to get swapped out on a page transition. By default, it's already Swup. So we actually don't even need that. And then we just call that head plugin that is going to refresh whatever has been changed inside the head on every page transition. So if we now run the dev server, we should have something that is working. And yeah, so we have that basic page transition. So it looks better than the first version we had, but we of course want to have it at that expert level where we really have those nice text animations with those image animations. So for that, we're going to go back into the documentation. And let's first start with the text animation. So we can see related resources. So we can click on this one because basically this page transition resource uses another resource, which is the text reveal resource that is also completely for free. So we're just going to install this one. So for that, we need GSAP. So let's install GSAP real quick. We have to import it like we did with Swup. So let's import it like that. Okay, let's make it clean and tight. And then we just import the text reveal function. I like to have my GSAB register plugin at the very top. We have the function right there, and then we just have to call that function, which is already called actually, like that. So now if we run the dev server, nothing's going to happen because we first have to also, let's just continue the documentation. So we have to add some record styles. So let's add those styles right there. And then we can already use it. So in our case, we just want to animate the character. So we're going to use this one. So what are the different elements we want to animate? So the H1 on this one and the H1 on the home page. So the home and the about text. So now if we go back into our project, we can see that it animates the text on refresh. But if we go from one page to the other, it doesn't. The reason for that is that we also have to tell Swup to run JavaScript when we go from one page to the other. For that, we have to go back into the documentation of our page transition. And there we can see we have a Swup hook that is called content replace. And everything we put inside that hook is going to be to get called on a page transition. So let's add this hook and let's call text reveal. Okay, and if we now go from one page to the other, you can see that we have that text animation working. So now the last thing, we want to also animate those images to really have that nice effect. So for that, we can go back into the documentation, and at the very top we have a Learn More tab, and there it also explains how to do that entrance animation. So I'm just going to copy the function, paste it maybe under the text reveal function. And we can see that that function basically animates the images of page A and page B. In our case, page A is our index page. So let's add the class page A, and the about page is the page B, because the page B has an additional animation, which is that clip path animation. So now if we just call those two functions when we refresh a page, so when we first land on the website, we put it right here, and on a page transition, we put it right here. And now, if we go from one page to the other, we have that nice effect. Now the text reveal animation is maybe a bit fast, so what we can do is we can go into the text reveal and just change it, the duration, to maybe 1 for the character reveal. And let's see if it feels a bit better. Yeah, it's pretty nice. So that's pretty much it. If you like this kind of advanced animations, make sure to check out the platform details.so, first link in the description. There are many other page transitions, like this one, for example, a bit more advanced. And there's also always that copy for AI button in case you don't want to do it yourself. You can just copy all of the instructions for your favorite AI, like Cloud Code, ChatGPT, etc., and it's going to do it for you. And apart from the page transitions, there are also many other resources. New ones are getting added every week, like, for example, this navigation drawer resource and much more. So yeah, check it out, have fun.